You leaped into a lush green area and immediately dove to catch the squirrels. However, the tinkling bell proved cumbersome, hindering your attempts to capture them. Deep in thought, your steps grew heavy, but you persisted without giving up. Lurking behind a bush, you observed the movements of the carnivorous squirrels for several days. I learned that the bell was their only means of detecting my presence. It certainly wouldn't help me, but I also discovered their keen sensitivity to my mana. Crossing your arms, you sat down to ponder. The carnivorous squirrels were at the end of the food chain and had developed extremely sharp senses to compensate for their strength. While contemplating, 3 squirrels dashed past, causing you to tumble backward. You realized that mere hiding wasn't enough to deceive them. I needed another approach. You chased after the squirrels and continued to strategize. Finding a discreet hiding spot, you settled down to meditate and concentrated on drawing back the flowing shiju through your body. It was a risk in an unfamiliar territory, but relying on mana alone wasn't sufficient. You soon understood the need to purify your mind completely and adjust your approach to deal with such prey. Spotting squirrels foraging nearby, you swiftly chased them away, creating a quiet space for yourself. Bowing your head in contemplation, you reflected on the challenges faced. Over the course of several days, I continuously tested their limits and learned 3 valuable lessons. Firstly, revealing a hint of pure mana didn't truly scare them off, but was enough to alert them, preventing me from catching anything interesting. Secondly, internal control, akin to Sylvie, didn't raise their suspicions unless I was overly focused, revealing intentions and prompting their flight. Lastly, the external flow of mana didn't startle or draw their attention. You observed for a while and spotted 2 squirrels competing over a mushroom. Swiftly, you gathered the mushrooms into a pile and sat down to meditate, deep in thought. Furthermore, the flow of Sylvie, responsible for spreading purity throughout my body from the core, intensified the mana flow. It absorbed impure mana from the air into my body. However, this technique required a delicate balance between pure mana drawn from the core and the mana in the air, transferred through the mana flow. It had been many years since Sylvie at first taught me mana manipulation, allowing me to cease absorption and absorb mana while moving. If I had enough space, perhaps even fighting, I could automatically move mana, greatly assisting in mastering this new technique. With perfect balance, I could use mana without being detected by anyone or anything. Slowly, I opened my eyes to find the squirrels taking the pile of mushrooms I had gathered. I was ecstatic about this success. In the dark of night, amidst the forest, I continued to think. Each minute had to fill the mana core, slowing down the process considerably. But I couldn't do anything. It had been many days, but I still couldn't move much while maintaining the technique. And that stupid bell. I don't know if Sylvie's training was any better or not, and my family's gone. Tessia's gone. I lay on the ground and whispered to myself that no, I had to focus on training. That's the only way I can get back to them. Early the next day, I woke up and was full of energy. Standing in front of a fairly old tree, I said, I have to launch. Really fierce in the flesh-eating squirrels, before they responded to the bell, and had to go to the tree before the bell rang. Then a way to do it in your head appeared. I have to use mana to move, at a speed fast enough not to shake the bell in equilibrium mana, to hide out the tail of the squirrels to when I arrived. I keep testing it over and over, but it still didn't get it. I remember Cordry's words emphasizing control over the flow of mana and power, when I suppressed the presence to hide or appear, to reach the sense of the opponent's sensory disorder. I took a deep breath, focused on walking and said, dismantling the presence with the use of mana, it's hard to track in the air to wrap up a continuous increase in strength until you're taking, and it left on the ground with a lot of prints after a long time. It was that it made you tired. Winsome stood above, observing, and wondered what he was plotting. 2 weeks had passed. Maybe I trusted him too much, but I thought he would have caught a squirrel by now. Their tails can sense any mana distortions or movements in the area, but they are simple creatures. He just needed to erase his presence and stand still with the bait in his hand. At least, he learned the skill I wanted him to. He seemed quite disappointed with Alpho, but he had to be surprised when he saw him quickly pounce to catch a squirrel. Alpho completed the first step of the phantom step. An ordinary human could grasp the basics of the phantom step, the essence that helped the Tessia family surpass others in combat. He could go this far just by observing Cordry. What else could he achieve in 5 years? With a determined look, Altho sat in the bush, observing his target. A large white leopard attacked a squirrel. The leopard had several long wounds on its body, caused by the squirrel. Altho took a deep breath and quickly punched the leopard. He swiftly moved to a cliff, below which was a stream with several large rocks. He punched the tree beside him for losing his target. He knew that Winsome had come to find him on the first night after he caught the squirrel. He leaned against the tree, informing me that what I did to catch the squirrel was just the first step to the true essence of the phantom step. After that night, it took nearly 3 weeks to delve deep into the forest before I found Claude, the silver leopard that was my target. I had mastered the burst step to the point where I could sweep through nearly 10 areas without making a sound. But beyond that, the path to catching Claude was not much closer. He looked at his reflection in the clear stream. Altho, you don't give up easily, do you? Then he used the cold water to wash his face and clear his mind. Altho looked up at the tree branch. A squirrel was eating there. He touched his hungry stomach and wondered, when was the last time I ate? He stood up and stared at the squirrel, only to suddenly see a bird swooping down from the sky to grab it. The bird calculated the squirrel's movements and predicted where it would jump. Another squirrel nearby was also easily caught by the bird. He rushed forward to try and catch it but missed. It seemed like his burst step still needed improvement. I've been observing the birds for a week. They are stealthy and agile, but their speed can't compare to a carnivorous squirrel. I know that when they are spotted, the squirrels will try to dodge in a specific direction. Instead, the birds control the prey's movements. From a third-person perspective, I can see the bird coming first and know what it's going to do even before it attacks, something the squirrels can't foresee. But leopards are different from squirrels. Claude is smart. He's smart enough to evade me without a direct fight. Even though the essence of the phantom step is to conceal mana and fully unleash it on the enemy, I still have to move. The muscles responsible for creating that technique require extremely fast steps. The technique might work on squirrels, but it only gives Claude just enough time to dodge. I have countless questions in my mind, but what if I could eliminate them? What if I could almost completely remove the necessary movements to create that technique? It would be effective if I truly had instant teleportation. Then I could catch Claude. Theoretically, in my previous life, I learned that the body's complex muscle system works in pairs, each responsible for half of the movement. The biceps contract when the arm bends towards the shoulder, while the triceps activate when the arm extends. The abdominal muscles contract with each step the body takes, and the calf muscles play a crucial role in pushing off the ground. Although smaller in size, the body's mechanisms are even more complex when put into action, such as running or jumping. The knowledge of the body I retained from my previous life isn't insignificant, even up to this point. Altho took a deep breath and executed the actions rather quickly. He realized that I had been trying to control energy consciously and did not want to target specific muscles in a precise sequence or at an exact time. This was to skillfully activate a chain of muscles in the body, mimicking the use of other muscles without actually moving my entire body. If I could control timing and energy output perfectly, I could do something even Cordry couldn't do. I could use the phantom step without being limited to any standing position. He put his hands on his knees and wondered, "Come on, Altho, how much more time are you going to spend catching wild animals out here?" Altho walked barefoot in the forest and felt it was strange. Why is the forest so quiet today? I haven't seen any squirrels at all. He looked down at a nearby clearing and discovered a territorial battle between 2 silver leopards. No wonder the forest is so unusually empty today. He hid in a bush, observing the 2 leopards fighting. He suddenly wondered why Claude, who was winning, suddenly ran away. He thought this must be his only chance. Without thinking much, he rushed in to catch the leopard. After a while, he managed to catch it, but the leopard resisted fiercely, using its sharp claws to scratch Altho. Being too close to the edge, they both struggled and fell off a cliff. Seeing no other option, Altho had to use magic and apologize to Winsome. "I hope you understand. By using magic, he landed safely. Smoke billowed around. The leopard lay still, but he was very surprised to see a giant creature. After looking for a while, he realized it was a Titan bear. It was too small, not as big as the shadow he had just seen. Maybe it was just something else. It walked towards the lying leopard, looked at Altho, and said, this meal isn't going anywhere. So fresh. Altho was surprised and thought to himself, hey, is it talking? In the conversation, Winsome never mentioned anything about this. It roared and said, next, it's your turn. It lunged at Altho. What the heck is this? Altho thought as it continued to attack. A moving meal, how delightful. What are you going to do about it? Altho dodged its attacks, but unfortunately, he was hit squarely in the chest and smashed into a dirt wall. The blow caused him to spit blood. Supporting himself on the ground, he thought, this isn't the soul realm. If I die here, I'll die in the real world. The bear stepped towards Altho and said, finally, you're done for. Altho continued to evade its blows. When it attacked with its paws, it was a truly sharp slash. It roared loudly, threatening, the more you evade me, the more pain you'll endure, and there will be little left for me to eat. Altho's body now bore many wounds from the leopard and the Titan bear's attacks. Realizing he couldn't do much more, he raised his trembling hands and said, all right, I won't run anymore. He felt his body about to shatter from its punches. I can't hold on any longer. I have to end this now. I won't fight through 2 lives just to die under the claws of a fat bear. During the battle, the bracelet Winsome gave him fell to the ground and broke in half. At this point, he tried using his strength to defeat the bear, but he was severely injured in the process. Shortly after, Winsome appeared. He wondered why Altho had come down here. He approached to check on Altho's condition. His ribs were broken, he had many internal injuries, and his legs were bleeding continuously. All this because of one beast. Even a fully grown 3-meter-tall bear wouldn't cause this much damage, he thought. Suddenly, the beast seemed to be in pain, then twitched and stood up, but it was immediately subdued by Winsome. It's rare, indeed, Winsome thought. It seems like its body was taken over. This is the ability to possess the host's body and enhance the host's core to an astonishing level, even potentially fail to a war god. Angela tested on them to create an enhancement serum given to the Decathan people during the attack. I don't know if it was a coincidence or bad luck that he encountered it. He took out a gem and placed it in Altho's mouth. To defeat such a beast, Altho would have to go through a lot of hardship and pay a great price. When Altho woke up, his entire body was bandaged. After the fight with the bear, he passed out and didn't know what had happened. What happened? He wondered as he sat up, realizing he couldn't feel his legs. A woman approached and said, your legs are fine, young man. I had hoped we would meet under better circumstances. She handed him a glass of water. Altho asked, are we still in Epheotis? The woman's name was revealed to be Mike Day. She smiled warmly and said, you can call me Myre. Of course, there's no other place where I could help treat your severely injured legs. Using mana to heal them might be faster, but it would completely deform your bones. It's only been 2 days, Myre said, to Altho's alarm. 2 days, he exclaimed. Myre gently supported him and advised, don't try to get up tonight. It will take hours for your legs to recover. So rest. That is your top priority. Altho thanked Myre for treating him and for her hospitality. Myre turned, smiled, and said, you're welcome. After all, I don't usually treat anyone. I just wanted to meet the human boy considered the savior of the world. As she left, Altho's wounds began to age. Wanting his body to recover faster, he tried to meditate. As he focused, he noticed, wait a minute, my core is silver. Suddenly, golden lines appeared on his body, emitting tiny, multicolored particles into the air. I've never seen these purple streaks before, he thought, observing the changes. Just then, Myre opened the door and said, so it's true, you really have inherited the mind realm. She explained, the external manifestations on your body show when you tap into the power of Sylvia. The purple eyes and the glowing runes etched on your body signify the essence of the mind realm. Only the bloodline of the Indent family can possess this ability. Tell me, Can you see all 5 colors that make up existence? Altho replied, I think so. Placing the glass of water on the table, Myre continued, the mind realm is a skill named by the ancestors of the Indian family. When this power is used, the user becomes unmatched in the realm of existence. Although the skill itself doesn't hold much power, the energy that activates the mind realm allows the user to gain profound knowledge and understanding, something those who do not possess it will never know. Simply put, knowledge is the real power. Altho said, the last time I used the mind realm in stage 2, I could only see 4 colors. Now I can see the purple streaks. Is this one of the secrets that a lower race like mine isn't supposed to know? Myre responded, Asuras are indeed proud beings. Even among our tribe members, we keep secrets from each other and are greedy. The Indid family is no different. I won't claim to be different from all of them, but I've lived and experienced long enough to care little for such trivialities. However, I can teach you a thing or two. Would you like to go for a walk? In a breathtaking setting with towering cliffs adorned with cherry blossom gardens and a magnificent corridor, Myre pushed Altho in a wheelchair to go outside. Altho was amazed by the scene before him. Myre asked, beautiful, isn't it? All these creatures thrive thanks to mana in Epheovis. You can sense that, can't you? Initially, lower races or even Asuras couldn't control raw mana. The same goes for living creatures and magical beasts. Mages who are attuned to a specific element will absorb mana of that element from the air more easily. A bug landed on Altho's index finger, and Myre said, let's use this bug as an example. It can interact with all the sea dew in its world, but it only absorbs the sea dew particles its body can utilize the most. Mages are the same. For those with the essence of the mind realm, a fire mage will only absorb red sea dew particles. But after the refining process, the sea dew used first will be white. They walked to a lake, and Myre continued, now, let's talk about water mages. During the sea dew refining process, the amount of water element the mage's body absorbs won't be proportional to other elements. In the stage where the mage refines sea dew, the raw sea dew they absorb will alter their body. Their temperament will become more sensitive to that particular element. If they summon a fireball, they must focus on its shape, fire density, and speed. However, some mages can lift a stream of water, split it into multiple spheres, and shoot them to block an enemy's attack with just a flick of the finger. Myre asked, what do you think about this, Altho? Altho replied, because their body absorbed the water element during the refining process. Exactly, Myre said. After prolonged exposure to a specific element, mages will undoubtedly gain a profound understanding of that element. During their meditation, they reached a prepared tea table. Myre sat down and said, now, Altho, can you tell me what you know about aether? Altho scratched his neck and said, I don't know much either, but I know it can control time. Myre responded, clearly, aether is fundamentally different from sea dew. Both are entities that make up the world we live in, but aether operates in a very unique way compared to sea dew. Some speculate that aether is like the small bricks that build this world, while sea dew fills those bricks with life and nutrients. To put it simply, aether is the glass itself, and sea dew is the water inside that glass. As she spoke, Myre poured water into a glass and lifted it, swirling the water inside. She continued, without sea dew, one can still manipulate the water inside easily, but it would be much harder if we wanted to change the shape of the glass without breaking it. Even the praised aether users like the Indian clan have no solid theory to explain what they can do, things that no one else can. It's about the ability to detect aether through the essence of the mind realm. Those in the realm of existence cannot sense aether. She explained further, everyone knows there are laws of existence that bind our world tightly together, like this glass holding water. But they can't find the boundaries of that connection. You asked about those violet lights I saw when using the mind realm. That's right, that's aether. Through the use of the mind realm, I can see the glass of this world from the inside. That's the boundary of this world. With sea dew, the higher my core, the more water I can control. However, through impacting aether, we can control our own philosophical doctrines. Do you understand, Altho? Altho looked bewildered. Myre continued, Aether is made up of three components: evu, which controls time, spatium, which controls space, and vivum, which controls the components of life. No matter how powerful, deeply knowledgeable, or lucky someone is, they can only master one branch of Aether. However, over time, we have discovered a way for some Asuras to know where their capabilities lie. Curious, Alpho asked, how did they find out? Myre chuckled and somehow made strands of yellow light appear, imprinting them on her body. The old lady calmly spoke with ancient characters running along her body, using the realm of the mind. These characters on her body vary for each person using the realm. For me, they express a tendency towards vivum, which allows me to heal a child. Now, my child, activate your own realm, she instructed. As the child obeyed, she sat beside him, holding his hand, and remarked how impressive he appeared upon closer examination earlier. She then performed a series of gestures, creating violet particles floating in the air, playfully asking if this observation was correct. An inquisitive question from the child followed, wondering why he hadn't noticed this phenomenon before. Naturally, she assured him that this form was designed for study, often imperceptible to the ordinary. Aether operates uniquely compared to Sidu. Attempting to control Aether, as one does Sidu, only leads to failure. Once again, she likened it to a cup of water. One can drink, rinse, or divide it in many ways, but trying the same with a glass is futile. Although Aether exists around us, it also defines the boundaries that limit us and the child within our own confines. Vivum controls the components that constitute life, a power I used to restore your crippled legs, she affirmed. And now eager, asked how Aether transforms into vivum and how it can heal the child's legs. The old lady chuckled heartily before calmly explaining that after realizing her own inclination towards the essence of life, she had studied vivum for centuries. Yet, despite her expertise, she admitted lacking enough confidence to provide precise answers to his queries, and insisted he genuinely wished to know. Firstly, he needed to understand that he couldn't absorb Aether like Sidu does. Instead, he merely alters its presence and its impact on reality, and asked directly, does this mean the core doesn't affect Aether? The old lady explained that the core of an individual connects the body to the realm of existence. Therefore, the Sidu core is crucial because Aether cannot be directly controlled like Sidu. At some point, the child would recognize his own inclination, but they shouldn't rush during initial training. Over time, the child's training wouldn't depend on memory to refine Sidu anymore, but would achieve profound insights into untransmittable knowledge. She admitted not knowing if this was mere coincidence or destiny, but there was a reason why the child had capabilities and limitations in using Aether, and guessed it was due to Sylvia's will, but Myre shook her head. She clarified that was only part of the reason the child could endure Aether's pressure, not control it, and pondered and recalled that it was because the child could control all four elements. Exactly, the deep insight into the four basic elements allowed them to see beyond the surface and gain awareness of the cup. Smiling, the old lady asked if and could now dispel his realm. Impressed by the child's ability to sustain it for so long, she shared that she could tell which type of Aether suited him best. However, she solemnly shook her head and warned Anne, I can't know if you can consciously control Aether like we do. You can control all four elements, grasp both the dragon's will and realcraft, but you're still just human. Although sadly replied, I know, but I can tell you this much. She took out a pen, wrote something down, and told and she didn't know why he could control time but would never tend towards vivum. He couldn't fully grasp how to control Aether, even with Sylvia's will. Like Sylvia, he controlled the very structure of the boundaries, keeping the realm of existence in its proper place. Though he belonged to a different branch, as she said, knowing these truths couldn't make him consciously control this power. Please tell me, what do I have to do to be this great until now? All I know about this ability is that I can use it, but because the physical limitations of my species, yet again, Mrs. Myre placed her hand on the boy's shoulder and comforted him. I truly feel sorry for you, young man. You have the exceptional potential of a great figure, but your abilities are hindered by something beyond your control. I'm not saying this to mock you, but to remind you that you have every right to utilize this ability. Knowledge is a source of boundless power. With it, You might find a way to overcome the limitations of your species, something even the Asuras haven't yet discovered. I have broken many rules to impart this knowledge to you. If it falls into the wrong hands, it would surely be used against this world. So trust me, I genuinely wish the best for you. She held Alphao's hand comfortingly. Even when the mind cannot fully unleash its potential, it remains an incomparable asset in battles due to its sensory functions, elemental control capabilities, and superior combat skills. You possess all these abilities. Alphao stammered. But she said the movement techniques I created, which brought me to your house in such a terrible state, can't be one of them. She had instructed not to ever use that technique again. Altho lowered his head, pondering. All the days spent practicing and adjusting for a breakthrough seemed. She asked me about the operation of the acceleration, appearing surprised at how I trained myself. I hoped she might change her mind after hearing how it works. When he got home, Altho lay down on the bed, continuing to think. It was clear that the movement technique was very dangerous. The breakthrough to my silver core stage was a fortunate surprise. The battle with Cordry would easily help me become an AA rank adventurer, even without using elemental magic. He leaned against the bedpost. Currently, I have made some improvements with Sea-Doo. The acceleration is the only technique I have tried to create, but now it's no longer viable. There are indeed Asuras residing in Alakria, who possess the ability to control Sea-Doo, possibly beyond what I can imagine. According to Winsome's report, an attendant might have wiped out an entire squad with just one spear. Myre emphasized that knowledge is power, but it won't help me defeat Alagia. Waking up early the next morning, he took hesitant steps. Mrs. Myre had already come to Althao's room and said, "You had a rough night, didn't you?" I could tell through Vuvom. Althao sat down and complained, "It's awful that my leg is injured like this, but at least now I can walk well when I hear that. Because I mentioned Winsome will be borrowing you for a while. This period can be long or short, depending on what you can achieve throughout the process. I want to share some of my knowledge with you and guide you on the right path. But you are still human, and in terms of understanding Sea-Doo, the level of human knowledge is still very primitive. Now, my boy, think of all the spells you know, and when using any combination, try your best to attack me with full force." In his right palm, he was preparing a water orb, while in his left hand, he would shoot a small gust of wind. Althao, surprised, asked, "What, you little kid? I told you to use all your strength to attack me." Despite being injured, he still diligently practiced and learned. Mrs. Myre said, "You're planning to crack the ground beneath my feet? Clever idea, but I'd prefer you not ruin the grass." Althao, surprised again, asked how. "How is that possible?" "As I said, this is an ability you already possess. I'm merely guiding you on the right path," she said. With those words, the training time with Elder Myre quickly passed. Mrs. Myre sat behind Althao and said, "My dear boy, you weren't cautious about spells from behind." Althao turned around and said, "I didn't think you'd use healing techniques as an excuse to inflict serious harm on me. Understanding the fluctuations of Sea-Doo begins with sensing the spell the moment it interacts with the physical world. Then, use your mind to determine exactly how they will manifest." Althao frowned. "If you can heal all the injuries you caused me so easily, why don't you just cut off my leg so I can grow a new one?" She placed her hand on Althao's shoulder and said, "Using aether beyond a certain threshold comes at a price. No, I can't heal serious injuries, but to do that, I would have to extract the amount of aether sustaining someone else's life or something else. If that's the case, then don't attack me anymore." "That would be better," he replied. She laughed, "Haha, it would be great if your father wasn't fooled by my bait anymore. Remember that even if your opponent chooses to chant his spell out loud, what he is imagining is what truly affects the size, shape, and duration of the spell. You will encounter enemies who use chanting as a bait to deceive their opponents." Althao ran his hand through his hair and said, "It's been 6 weeks already. You must guess that by now, I've engraved this lesson into my heart." She stood up, extending her hand, signaling for him to stand, and said, "That's because you're still too hasty and trying to face the spell before its shape is revealed. It took me decades to get it right, and among us dragons, that's considered fast." He stood up by himself and said, No need to pull me up, I'm fine. Let's try again. He prepared his move and concentrated, chanting the spell Wind Bullet, and then releasing his technique. Mrs. Myre saw this and said, "Good." He launched his attack while thinking, "That's an earth spike under the right foot." While practicing, Winsome grabbed his shirt and said, "I guess we no longer have time for this." Winsome knelt down, apologizing for the interruption. Mrs. Myre said, "Stand up. I'm glad to see you, Winsome." As he stood there, Altho thought, "I figured out that Mrs. Myre holds a certain influence within the Indent tribe, demonstrated by her power, and the fact that she can keep me here. But even Winsome has to kneel before her." Winsome, bowing, said, "I'm sorry for coming unannounced, but the Lord of Indent has arranged for the next instructor for Altho, and he is quite impatient waiting for his student." "I understand. He's done very well with his mind training. I want to continue watching over this child, so if I occasionally intervene, it's no problem, right?" she asked. Winsome placed his hand on his chest, bowed his head, and replied, "Of course not." Then she turned to Altho and said, "Now remember what I've told you about the world around us. Keep training your mind." "Of course, by the next time we meet, I'll have mastered it," he replied. Mrs. Myre and Altho waved goodbye to each other. Winsome and Altho walked together. Seeing that he had something to say, Altho asked, "What's the matter?" Winsome replied, "It's surprising that Mrs. Myre not only took the time to heal you, but also to train you. Your luck continues to amaze me." Altho asked, "By the way, who exactly is Myre?" "Mrs. Myre. If she didn't tell you herself, then I don't have the right to do so either," Winsome replied. Altho smiled and said, "You know, the first time I met you, I realized that your position was anything but ordinary. Now it doesn't seem so extreme." Hearing this, Winsome threatened, "Watch your mouth, human. Even though I hold one of the lowest ranks among the Asheras, I am still far stronger than any of your inferior kind in Decadent. Now, let's go in. Your instructor is not one to wait long," he warned. The two of them walked in together. Altho looked around and asked, "So, the next training session will be held here?" Winsome responded, "You've been taught how to harness magic and engage in close combat, enhancing countless skills. Now, you will start integrating all of them into a unified fighting style, utilizing your magic, elemental abilities, and combat skills." A voice asked, "So, this is the boy predicted to become the hero who will lead Decadent to victory against the armies trained by Chrysra and his pathetic, disgusting minions." Before he could see what the next instructor looked like, someone jumped down from above where Winsome and Altho were standing, creating a thick white smoke. Before Altho could make out the figure, he was grabbed in a firm grip and heard a voice say, "Hello, kid," before being let go. A man jumped down and said, "From your expression, I guess this didn't scare you much, huh? Maybe just a little surprised." Winsome said, "Altho, I want you to meet Wren. He will be instructing you for a long time. Get acquainted with each other." Altho approached Wren and bowed, saying, "It's a pleasure to meet you. I am Altho, and I look forward to your guidance." Wren ignored Altho's greeting and angrily asked Winsome, "In human society, what is the punishment for someone who arrives late?" Winsome looked startled and asked, "Punishment?" Wren said, "Maybe cutting off a finger or a toe." "No, that seems a bit severe. Imprisonment or social isolation would be more appropriate." Altho, frightened, said, "What are you talking about? Being late a little shouldn't warrant such harsh punishment." Winsome replied, "It might leave a bad impression, but indeed, humans do not have any formal punishment for tardiness." Wren, disheartened, asked, "What? No punishment? That's ridiculous for a race with such short lifespans. I would think you would value time more than anything. You humans are truly a backward lot." Altho thought to himself, "Yeah, we are backward." Wren turned away, flicking his outer coat, which hit Altho in the face, and said, "Let's set aside that ignorance for now. We should talk about why you're here and why I had to drag myself to this abandoned volcano." He then seriously told Altho, "Take off all your clothes." Altho hesitated for a few seconds, then started removing his clothes, saying, "As you wish." Wren looked at him and said, did you just say something? Althau replied, no, nothing at all. Standing there with his tall, muscular frame exposed, Althau asked, is this enough, or do you want to examine my privates too? Wren approached, pointed at him, and said, quite the tongue for the savior of the inferior race. But this feather wrapped around your arm has caught my attention. Wren picked up the feather and realized it was a dragon feather. It's such a waste to use a rare crafting material like this for something so trivial. Don't you think? Althau, curious, asked, crafting material? Explain. Wren said, the feathers on our arms are a special type of scale with unique effects on both Sea-Doo and Aether. Since birth, our feathers never fall off. So when a dragon gives its feather to someone, it is a symbol of their absolute trust and affection. Wren handed back the feather. Althau took it, looked at it, and said, I never knew that. As emotions surged, Wren grabbed his hand and said, enough about feathers. Spread your arms out. Althau spread his arms wide, looking around from top to bottom, from his hands to his feet, inspecting his entire body and muttering numbers to himself. 8, 9, 2, 3. All right, he said. Now we will begin casting the basic spells of all the elements you can control. You can only use your right hand. Start with a stone pillar, 2.5 meters tall and 20 centimeters in diameter. Excuse me, what? Althau began to ask, but a stone pillar instantly appeared. Wren interrupted, no time for questions. Althau then proceeded to cast spells for the 4 elements he could control. Wren stood by, observing closely. Measurement and calculation complete, Wren said. Next, we will assess the efficiency of using Sea-Doo in combat. Begin. A massive beast appeared. Wren quickly instructed, cast a spell on it now. Althau immediately attacked the beast with all his might. Wren observed from the sidelines, offering reminders. Missed, he remarked. Althau realized Wren was among those who meticulously monitored his progress. Listen, Althau said, I would be more willing to cooperate if I truly understood your objective. After all these notes and measurements, your evaluation seems rather subjective. I feel more comfortable using fire and water elements, but the Sea-Doo element here is scarce. Wren responded, of course, I've taken that into account. How old are you again? Almost 15, Althau replied. Wren, deep in thought, muttered, not entirely brainless. Then said, continue the analysis of your Sea-Doo manipulation from a distance. Althau, feeling frustrated, glanced at Winsome, who remained silent. Althau charged forward, ready to attack, but had to pause when he saw numerous massive beasts. How many traps can you create at once? He asked. Wren calmly replied, depending on their level, I can create a few thousand of these. Now, defeat them all. With determination, Althau advanced and systematically took down each beast. Once all the beasts were defeated, he walked confidently towards Wren, asking, what's next? Wren, appearing pleased, replied, you seem to be enjoying this. Next, we need to study your physical limits. Winsome mentioned that your swordsmanship is quite skilled and that you have recently learned combat techniques under Cordray's guidance. Shivering from the cold, Althau hugged himself and asked, all right, but how long do I have to stay naked? Wren responded, I need to analyze every movement. It's best to continue as you are. Don't worry, I'm not interested in your naked body. Althau chuckled. That's somewhat reassuring. Now, show me the first weapon you'll use in battle. Althau immediately drew out his favorite sword. Wren took it and was visibly surprised, then suddenly burst into laughter. Misinterpreting the reaction as mockery, Althau said, it may look simple, but it's not. Let me show you, and tried to take it back, but Wren stopped him. I know what this is, kid, Wren said, turning to Winsome and raising the sword. You knew about this beforehand, didn't you? That's why you asked me to train him. Winsome replied, I had my suspicions. As Wren prepared to unsheathe the sword, Althau shook his head, you won't be able to. Only I can. To Althau's shock, Wren easily drew the sword. How did you? He stammered, are you a mage? Wren twirled the sword skillfully and held it before Althau, saying, no, puppy. It's because I created this sword. Althau was taken aback, recalling the time he first found the sword and noticed the inscription Dawn's Dance on the blade. Wait, you made this sword? How is that possible? Wren replied, Did I speak in an alien language? Yes, I created this sword. Why do you think it's indicated? Dawn's Dance, Wren explained, is one of my experimental weapons, a failed one. I casually discarded it in the monster forest on your continent during a mineral gathering trip. I thought no one would ever bother with this stick, let alone draw it. The odds of it ending up in your hands are incredibly slim. Wait, Althau interrupted, you're saying Dawn's Dance is a failure. I've never seen a sword crafted as exquisitely as this in my life. Wren shrugged. While you may hold it in high regard, comparing any of my weapons, even the least of them, to the primitive tools of your inferior race is an insult. This sword was designed to be versatile in any situation, but it turned out to be just a sharp tool, nothing more. Wren then pretended to break the sword, causing Althau to panic. However, he only tested its strength and didn't break it. Turning to Winsome, Wren remarked, This makes things interesting. Winsome agreed, I thought so too. What do you plan to do now that you've met him? Althau, confused, asked, What's going on? Winsome spoke slowly. Althau, I brought you to meet Wren to accomplish two things. First, as I mentioned before, his methods, though unconventional, are remarkably effective in combat training. Secondly, I hope Wren will create a sword that suits your unique fighting style. Althau was astonished. Really? You mean you'll actually forge a sword for me? Wren corrected him. I don't forge swords, kid. I create them. I agreed to train you because I owe Lord Indon a favor. But that favor isn't significant enough for me to waste time creating a sword for an inferior being. From now on, I'll be keeping the Dawn's Dance sword. What? Will you return it to me? Althau asked in dismay. Wren responded, Dawn's Dance may be just a sharp tool, but it chose you. Although this special product isn't something I'm particularly proud of, I won't keep it forever. He then pulled a sword from the ground and handed it to Althau. You'll use this sword for training from now on. I created it to measure the user's movements and the force exerted on it. Althau took the sword, swung it a few times and asked, And you can summon it from the ground at any time. Wren replied, surprised by such a small thing, huh? Now, give me the dragon feather. Althau, puzzled, asked, Why? Wren covered his face with his hand and said, Why do you question everything I do? Just hand it over. Reluctantly, Althau handed over the feather. Wren, suddenly remembering, remarked, I just realized your inferior race needs more sleep than we do. Rest for a bit. Confused, Althau asked, Wait, so tonight we head to the center of this volcano? Wren turned back and replied, Who said we? Winsome and I have matters to attend to. Besides, the battlefield won't have a comfy bed waiting for you. I'm only looking out for you. Winsome and Wren both encouraged him. Try to get some rest. Good night, Althau said, feeling a mixture of confusion and determination. So the two of them left, leaving me alone. Although back here, he grimaced and said, Are you speaking well of me? More like lying. The night fell, and while Although was sleeping in the tent he had set up, the sound of falling rocks suddenly woke him. He stood up, tied his hair back, and was unexpectedly attacked by a beast. Fortunately, he dodged it just in time, grabbed his sword, and fought back. After a tough struggle, he finally managed to defeat it. Wren stood above and called down, You'll never truly rest on the battlefield, kid. You must always be ready to fight in optimal condition. Now, get your gear and continue the battle. Although frustrated, stripped off his clothes and cursed the old lunatic. His goal was to defeat the commanders, the ones with crowns on their heads. He charged at the regular beasts to quickly reach and take down the commander beast. Wren announced, In this battle, you will have allies. Although you are one of the main forces, everything will depend on you, whether you choose to charge at the enemy or defend alongside your teammates, ensuring everyone's safety. After a series of attacks, he drove his sword into the chest of the commander beast, ending the battle. He collapsed onto the ground, panting, and said, That was intense. Wren came down holding a piece of paper and read, The total casualties on our side are 271, while the enemy lost 512. Not a very impressive victory compared to their weak beasts. He handed the paper to Although and said disheartenedly, "You let too much of your comrades die, kid." Although sat up and said, "Maybe it's because they looked like stone gorillas to me, so I temporarily put aside the recent battle." Wren had brought a loaf of bread and a bottle of water for Although. Seeing it, his eyes lit up. He took it and sat in a corner, devouring the food. I feel no sympathy for them, whether they are on our side or the enemy's. Wren said, "I'll keep that in mind. Now go to sleep. Tomorrow won't be any easier." He laid down and closed his eyes to sleep but immediately heard a noise. He quickly got into a combat stance, surprised to see a beast with an evil grin holding Tessia by the neck, lifting her up. Tessia clung to her fingers and cried out for help. "Let me go. Someone, please save me." Although furious, rushed in and severed the arm holding Tessia to save her. Now freed from its grasp, Tessia was safe, but the severed arm suddenly regenerated, and the beast immediately lunged at Although. Without hesitation, he attacked back. From his vantage point, Although saw Tessia lying unconscious below and leaped down to her. His arm was bleeding profusely. He said, "This has gone too far, Wren. Enough is enough." The beast instantly vanished. Wren emerged from the thick smoke, saying, "You caught on quickly. I was waiting to see your next move if things escalated further." Although replied, "It wasn't hard to recognize this ridiculous scenario was fake. I hope you didn't do this just for fun." Wren questioned, "Why would I be kicked just for training you? Are you against my training methods? Is this some kind of punishment from your inferior race?" Although answered, "No, it's just an idiom. Forget it." Although had used a term meaning for fun or interesting, but Wren interpreted it literally as a kick. Wren continued, "Regardless, I did this for your own benefit. Look at your current state. You've recklessly spent most of your energy just to save that girl." Although grimaced and said, "Listen, I know it wasn't the best choice at the time, but to me, some people are more important than myself." Wren shook his head. "Of course, familial and romantic relationships are important, even for ASU." Blushing, Although explained, "What do you mean by romantic relationship? Tessia is not my partner." Wren smirked, "Oh. According to Winsome and your own expressions, you clearly have feelings for her. So, have you two done anything yet?" Embarrassed and angry, Although snapped, "Done anything? No, not yet." He calmed down and said, "Come on, Wren, we're getting off track here. So, you can create any kind of puppet just with soil?" Although asked. Wren replied, "I can create objects with my own hands." He fashioned a chair and sat on it, holding his face in frustration. "But not everything. I can't simulate water properties with just soil. Moreover, how did you realize it was all fake?" Although calmed down and explained, "I realized I could see the fluctuations of the seed dew particles, the yellow earth element, around them. Even though they looked very realistic, there's no way a deity would take her all the way to Epheotis. Can someone from an inferior race truly have such deep understanding to perform seed dew magic on par with the Asheris?" Wren continued, shaking his head, "In my dictionary, there's no such thing as impossible, but this is highly unlikely. Still, you don't need to worry about that." Although asked, "Why not?" "Because you are living proof that anything is possible. You are innately able to comprehend and manipulate all four elements, including their special forms. In short, mastering all four elements is the key to unlocking the mysteries of the gift the princess bestowed upon you. You are extraordinary, kid. Even Asheras don't have such natural talent as you do." Although smiled and said, "If that's a compliment, thank you. So, Master, what do we do next?" Wren took his hand and said, "First, show me your dominant hand." He held it up and introduced, "This is a mineral called Lucky. Alone, it's just an ordinary, useless piece of rock. However, through proper refining and synthesis, something I'll take to the grave with me, it can become extraordinary. Remember, I once told you I'm not a blacksmith who forges swords but one who creates them. With this crystal and the right tools, I can develop it into a weapon." Although curiously asked, "Develop it like a tree growing?" Wren replied, "Sort of, but not exactly. But if that's what your tiny brain can comprehend, Then sure, let's go with that. Usually, it would take me years, even centuries, to observe your fighting style, analyze and compile the necessary information to create a weapon perfectly suited for you. But given our current circumstances, I'll have to risk trying this method. While Wren was embedding the lucky gem into the flesh of his hand, although asked him why, but it seemed Wren's actions were quite painful. Why didn't you warn me about this? Although inquired. Mumbling to himself, Wren apologized, sorry, I forgot to count to 3. He explained, I synthesized this lucky gem from the feathers of Lady Sylvia and the scales of Miss Sylvie. But what's truly crucial is your contribution to who you are today. Every action, thought, and change within your body will determine the nature of your weapon. Even I cannot predict what it will be like, or if it will even become a weapon. Otho looked at his hand curiously and asked, but why choose such an uncertain path? I thought you weren't planning to make a weapon for me. Just a sharp sword isn't enough to face those destroyers, and time is running short. I thought the war wasn't starting for another 2 years. Concerned, although asked Wren about the current situation in Dicketon with Winsome and Lord Indent. Wren replied, Winsome and Lord Indent didn't want me to tell you this, but I want you to make an informed decision after hearing everything. While we can't determine how long the lucky gem will take to activate, it could take up to a year, maybe even 5, to develop it into your weapon. You still need to increase your strength before the war. Although frustrated, clenched his fists and asked urgently, but why the rush? This isn't normal, Wren. Even though the army hasn't arrived, the war has already begun. He turned away and said, I'm going back to fight. Wren created 2 massive hands to hold all those legs and angrily said, and then what? Sit and wait to be killed. Although angrily responded, I've been training aether for months to face them. That's not the only reason I'm here. Wren sternly replied, it's still not enough, kid. With your current abilities, you're not even a match for a foot soldier. Seriously, Wren continued, give me a year, and with my help, you'll truly have a chance to bring victory to the land of Dicketon. Although stood there, angered, contemplating for a while before saying, 1 year. In a grand building amidst the pristine air of Dicketon, Tessia, with a determined expression, expressed her desire to her grandfather, Virion. I can fight, grandfather. I'm stronger now, she said, holding a stack of papers. Virion replied firmly, I've already said no. Assuras, named Lasti, sitting on a chair sipping tea, added, she's right, grandfather. Sending her to the battlefield now is too risky and unnecessary. Angered, Tessia turned and asked sharply, so when will I be needed then? You yourself said I'm much stronger now. Lasti retorted, that's still not enough. Frustrated, Tessia requested permission and stormed out, slamming the door behind her. As she left, Virion asked Lasti, is this really the best course of action? Lasti responded, you know how much she means to Altho. No matter how many years we've trained Assuras, sending the girl to the battlefield will surely affect his judgment. Tessia walked along the corridor to a door blocked by 2 guards. One asked, which wind brings you here, princess? Tessia replied seriously, please open the door. I request it. The guards apologized, stating they hadn't received any orders from their commander or Lasti to let anyone out. Tessia insisted, open the door. At that moment, Lance Beret stood beside her and informed the guards, I'm accompanying her. We need to attend to some matters. Hearing this, the guards did not hesitate to open the door for them. Tessia thanked Beret and they entered. Inside, a soldier bowed and greeted them, saying, General Beret, Princess Tessia, where would you like to go? Beret glanced at Tessia, who then spoke up to the city of Etistin. Please ensure identification at the gate, as attacks from the outskirts are increasing day by day. Turning to Beret, Tessia whispered, are you sure you want to come along and watch over me? Beret replied, well, I've just finished a training session with Princess Serlin, so a little rest wouldn't hurt. Tessia chuckled at this. Etistin used to be the capital of Sapin, a kingdom of humans. She remembered from school that the city was built on the western coast of the continent, far away from the dwarves' kingdom and the Elsano tribe, as well as to keep a safe distance from the wild forest beasts. Currently, all the battles were concentrated in the wild forest, making Etistin the farthest city from the front lines, an ideal strategic defensive position with 3 sides bordered by the sea. However, several years ago, following the announcement of an impending widespread war, King Glader had destroyed the entire city and rebuilt it as the final defensive line to counter the armies of other nations. Myre and Tessia arrived at Etistin city, bustling with people. Myre cautioned her to remember her knowledge and warned her to be vigilant at all times. Tessia innocently replied, "But having you with me, isn't that enough? Besides, this isn't the farthest city from the front lines, is it?" Myre replied solemnly, "During wartime, one must always be prepared for the worst-case scenarios." Tessia asked, "You said you just finished training with Serlin, right? How was it?" Baijon reported to the deity that Serlin was quite determined and diligent, but her progress was still quite slow. Despite being a pure beast tamer, her ability to manipulate Sea-Dew was only average. On the other hand, Princess Serlin was progressing rapidly. Baijon heard that she was a natural genius above others, and after the last 2 years, the deity finally understood why. Tessia stopped to buy something from a roadside vendor and replied, "Well, it's not like she's better than everyone." Myre agreed, saying that it was indeed impossible to predict. The deity had forgotten that there was another extraordinary young man, Altho, who was in a completely different league. It remained unclear how his skills would develop after completing training with the Asuras. Myre hoped that he would be ready for the battlefield. Tessia sighed and said, "Do you think Alexia's army could sweep all the way here?" Grandfather said Principal Goodsky mentioned that Alexia is located to the west of Dicketin. Doesn't that mean Etistin is the city closest to the enemy? Why must it be? Myre interrupted gently, but she also said that they have no way to transport a large number of troops across the sea. That's why they chose a more discreet method, using the teleportation gates they've set up throughout the wild forest. These gates could provide significant resources hidden in endless mazes and dungeons until they're ready to attack. Tessia nodded in understanding. She lowered her head in thought. All the information we know about the enemy comes from Principal Goodsky. Although Master Lasti partially lifted the curse, preventing her from revealing any information related to our homeland, she still remains in a coma. The war has strained the relationship between her and Grandfather, but I'm not the only one feeling uneasy. He and the council must handle everything possible on the societal front. After the deaths of King and Queen Green, the dwarves rebelled, making it even harder for the council to rebuild alliances with each city and prepare armed forces. Grandfather had to shoulder all of that. Luckily, I'm still training. Tessia's focus was so intense that she didn't notice her surroundings until someone holding a stack of papers approached cautiously. She startled, drawing her sword to attack, but then hesitated and stammered, "Emily." 2 figures embraced joyfully and happily. Princess Emily. Seeing Myre standing behind, Emily waved and greeted, "Hello, General Myre." Myre politely replied, "Princess, I'm delighted to see you again." Emily sat down and said, "It's so good to meet you. I helped my friend pick up these papers. I'm sorry I ran out suddenly." Emily apologized. "I should be the one apologizing. I had to carry so much stuff that my glasses slipped down, and I couldn't see properly." She adjusted her glasses and smiled brightly. "But it was quite exciting, you know, like an adventure game." Suddenly, she exclaimed, "Oh no, I can't waste any more time here." She hurriedly stood up and said, "I have to go." Tessia asked, "What's the matter?" "Those papers seem very important." Emily replied quickly, "Professor Gideon even requested aid from a merchant, and even the council." She trailed off as she hurried away. Tessia held a stack of papers in her hand and approached Myre, asking if she could come along. Glancing in the direction where their classmate had just run off to, Myre agreed. The 2 of them followed their friend. Earlier, when Tessia and Myre had arrived in the city, lost in their thoughts, they accidentally bumped into their classmate, Emily. After a brief exchange, Tessia, Myre, and Emily proceeded together towards Professor Gideon's research location along the road. Noticing Emily's apparent concern, Tessia took the initiative to ask, "What have you and Professor Gideon been researching lately? It's been a while since we saw him at the castle." "Don't call him Professor," Emily retorted. His mind isn't quite right anymore. Don't even mention education for our nation's lovely young ones. I swear, I can't remember how many times I've had to train my beloved professor up from useless piles of rubble and wreckage after his self-induced explosions. And you, how have you been, princess? Emily continued with a hint of frustration. Don't call me princess, you know I don't like it. Lately, it's been unbearable in the cramped corridors and low-ceilinged rooms of the castle. They say the castle's now out of season. Tessia chuckled. Oh, you think I'm funny, huh? Emily sighed. Try dealing with his ramblings all day long. See how long your sense of humor lasts. Tessia retorted. Try being stuck for a year in a castle with Asheras and a domineering grandfather who treats every breath like a threat. It's like facing danger with every inhale. Emily nodded sympathetically. But don't let the commander get to you too much. After what happened to you, you know, after that incident, I can't imagine how worried your parents and he must be. Tessia reassured her, I know. I'm trying my best. Last year was really tough for all of us. Training hard is the only way I can reassure myself that I'm getting stronger, ready for anything. Like the relentless attacks by Alexia's army into the monster forest. I just wish I could be out on the battlefield right now. Curious, Emily asked. What about Altho? Any news from him? Tessia sighed sadly. You know he's old news. Master Lastic repeats himself like a parrot every day. He's just training him to know. And him, how is he? Tessia looked disheartened. No news at all. It's been so long, and I still don't understand why he ended up there. All I know is, he tried to save me before he was taken. That's why Vare said we should go, Tessia added. As they stepped inside, Tessia asked, What is that awful smell? Emily replied, What smell? There are many minerals and materials here, either being melted down or refined, so it's hard to distinguish. Someone exclaimed, Damn it! How many times have I told your flat-headed crew not to mix those kinds of minerals in the same container? Their properties are incompatible, and we end up with two piles of useless rocks. Emily commented, just like our dear professor. A man bowed and greeted, Good afternoon, Princess. General Emily, it's a relief that you've returned so quickly. Professor Gideon is waiting for you. Emily said, That's fortunate. Is he having one of his fits again? I'm afraid so, the man responded. He is likely eagerly awaiting your notes. Do you know what these are, Professor Gideon? The man, along with Emily, focused on a stack of papers, reading through them while Vare and Tessia stood outside, understanding nothing. Emily asked, Professor, what is this? He opened a book, read it, then closed it forcefully, saying, General, I have sent a formal request to the council. Since you're here, you can come with me. It would be very helpful. Vare asked, So where are we going? Gideon replied, The eastern coast on the northern border of the Beast Forest. They set off together, and Tessia wondered, Why is Professor Gideon in such a hurry? Gideon announced, We have arrived. Stay alert. Tessia was startled. Is this the place? Gideon said, They have tasked us with finding a way to travel long distances across the sea, using an engine powered not by wanderer energy, but by steam generated from external materials. Tessia exclaimed, Wait, then this isn't it. Gideon responded, It's even worse. Worse? What do you mean? Tessia asked. Gideon didn't answer, merely urging them to hurry. Tessia thought, Will he answer any of our questions? Tessia inquired, Are these traces from a base? Emily remarked, How big must the beast be to leave such bite marks? Jay commented, No signs of life. Gideon said, A useless precaution, but thank you nonetheless for your observation. Then he pondered, If this isn't the ship, then what is it? Aside from Professor Gideon, who else could have created it and even launched it into the sea? And where have the people on the ship gone? Vare replied, Everything has been completely destroyed. Someone deliberately erased all traces containing valuable information that could prove the ship's identity. Tessia said, It seems like someone on the ship doesn't want others to know their identity. Emily asked, Could it be that someone stole the professor's design? Maybe one of his competitors? Gideon responded, That's impossible. Until a few weeks ago, the ship was completely submerged in the water. If it weren't for the receding tide, a group of adventurers who discovered it and reported back, we would never have known about it. Emily asked, "But what about the crew on the ship? Do you think they all drowned?" Gideon said, "No, at least not all of them. There are no traces left, no evidence, nothing at all. The crew didn't want anyone to know about this ship, let alone the goods and people on it." Vare said, "I have a bad feeling when I saw this ship, but I want you to confirm it yourself. After reading the report, I prayed that my judgment was wrong, but it seems I was right. At first, I thought maybe, just maybe, the missing crew repaired it and brought it back. But upon closer examination, I'm confident this isn't the case, and it has nothing to do with Etistin." Emily anxiously asked, "Professor, do you mean that?" "That's exactly what I mean," Gideon interrupted. "Its existence will change the entire course of this war." Tessia said, "This war? Do you mean to say, Princess, that Alisir has the capability to create a ship that can carry an entire army across the ocean to Reconnecting?" As Professor Gideon led Vare, Princess Tessia, Emily, and a man to a ship with strange markings, they asked dozens of questions upon arrival. Meanwhile, Tessia's grandfather sat in a room, feeling that things were far more serious than anticipated, or rather, the leaders themselves were being complacent. In the council meeting, the king pounded his fist on the table and said, "Damn it, are you sure about that, Gideon?" Gideon stood below, slowly presenting as he had said, "Your Majesty, whether this ship comes from Alaska is only my speculation, but I can assure you of one thing, it is not Chikatho." The queen held her husband's hand to calm him and asked Gideon, "How can you be so sure?" Gideon explained, "Chikatho is an invention I am extremely proud of. I wanted everyone to know about it, so I marked it, essentially signed it, and it is present on the entire frame of the ship. But on that ship, there is not a single sign. Moreover, the material used to construct the frame is completely different from Chikatho." At this moment, King Down angrily slammed the table and stood up. "Damn it!" Vian tried to calm him down, saying, "Calm down." Down replied, "Calm down? Did you not hear what Gideon just said? Forgive me, but how can I remain calm knowing the enemy is ready to attack? They can bring hundreds, if not thousands, of wizards and soldiers across the sea to here. It's bad enough that those bastards are lurking in the beast forest, and now—" Lasti interrupted, "Enough," and asked Vare for her opinion. Vare replied, "Although I do not understand the detailed construction of Chikatho, I agree with the professor's point. The fact that the ship has been wiped clean of any traces is enough proof." The king's wife asked, "Could it be a trap or a strategy to divide our forces and distract us from the beast forest?" Lasti reasoned, "If their goal is to divide our forces, bringing the ship's remains to the western coast would be much more effective, because that is where they want to trick us into believing they will attack." Tessia's mother added, "With the tide constantly changing like this, finding the ship truly is a miracle." Lasti said, "Now the question is it worth the risk? That Alaska, isn't it?" She revealed that Alaska is trying to move troops deeper into the beast forest. But to be so complacent that they have only one plan is truly foolish. We have no choice but to prepare as best we can to face both fronts. But without the help of the dwarves, it will be difficult for us to gain the upper hand. Belina said, "Maria Azun, please allow Piziala and me to join the next meeting in the Dwarf Kingdom. We need to continue strengthening the cities along the western coast." Her grandfather agreed, "She is right. We need the help of the dwarves to win this war." After the council meeting ended, he returned to his room, his head filled with thoughts. He pondered how Alexia had managed to bring troops across the sea, and how Tessia had discovered one of their ships. He couldn't even be angry when Vare took her out. Honestly, he was quite surprised that Tessia had left the castle for so long. Lost in his troubling thoughts, there was a knock on the door. He called out, "Come in." Tessia opened the door and said, "Vare said you wanted to see me, Grandpa." He stood up and said, "Yes, Tessia, I want to show you something." A beam of blue light revealed the battlefield scene from 5 days ago. "We sent over 400 people to that dungeon," he said. 200 soldiers and 20 mages never returned. Grandfather said sorrowfully. I was the one who ordered them down there. Their deaths are my responsibility. The war has only just begun, but I have made decisions that I will never forgive myself for. It was a selfish desire of a man who wanted to protect you from danger, regardless of how significant a role you could play in the battle. Tessia, looking worried, stammered, Grandpa. He walked over to where the weapons were kept, took up a sword, and said, Tessia, you are an exceptionally talented mage. With 2 more years of hard training, you will be a valuable asset in the war. But no matter how great your power, you are still human. Just one small mistake. That is why I have always forbidden you from joining any battles until now. Tessia was surprised but remained silent, listening to her grandfather. After witnessing what you are about to see, do you still want to be part of this war? He asked. With a determined look, Tessia replied, yes. He threw the sword he was holding to Tessia. Tessia quickly grabbed the sword her grandfather handed her. He said, then prove your determination to me. The two of them headed to a large open field. He asked, you understand the principles of the fight, right? Without hesitation, Tessia quickly replied, I understand. Immediately, they both plunged into the fight. Although it was only the first moments of the battle, it was already intense and fierce. Shortly after, Tessia was hit, but she was not discouraged or daunted by it. She continued to fight seriously to prove her abilities to her grandfather in the battle. Her grandfather commented, your ability to control beasts has improved a lot. Using that as motivation, she continued to prove herself, and he was surprised when she prepared for her next move. He said, Tessia, while preparing to attack. She warned her grandfather to be careful, but contrary to her warning, it was Tessia who got injured, not her grandfather. He took her down with a kick. At this point, Tessia stammered and admitted, I lost. I couldn't even land a proper hit. Tessia seemed quite sad and frustrated with herself. Her grandfather sternly said, on the battlefield, you must call me commander, not grandpa. Tessia was surprised and looked up at him. She suddenly realized something and joyfully asked, does that mean? She moved closer to her grandfather and smiled, saying, thank you, grandpa. Thank you so much. But her grandfather said, if you go to the battlefield, I will have one condition for you. He slowly continued, you must have the permission of both your father and mother. You must bear the responsibility of a member of the royal family. The commander of your squad will surely bring this up, but whether you become a burden or not depends on you. If your teammates feel you cannot take care of yourself, I will pull you out of the battle immediately. Understood? Without any hesitation or doubt, she cheerfully and promptly replied, yes, of course, absolutely. Being allowed to join the battle made Tessia so happy that no words could describe her feelings at that moment. But her grandfather seriously instructed, also, try not to get into a situation where you have to use phase 2. You still can't fully control it, so using it on the battlefield would be too risky. She was silent for a while, then pushed away that hand her grandfather was pointing at her. She said, Master Lasti said the same thing. He said that the beast will I assimilated is very strange, but he also couldn't understand why it was like that. She turned her back and continued, but don't worry, Grandpa. I will try my best. Now I'll go find my parents. As she was about to leave, her grandfather worriedly called out, Sweetie Tessia. She turned back to listen to him speak. From today on, I will no longer be your grandfather. In the past, my actions and decisions regarding you were all for your safety and happiness. With his hands clasped behind his back, he continued, but now that you have become a soldier, I must treat you like a soldier. Whether the orders come directly from me or from your general, you must understand that those orders prioritize Etistin above all else, not your personal safety. This is my final warning from now on. Before he could finish, Tessia ran up to him, beaming, I understand, Commander. She hugged him for a moment, then saluted him with a serious expression and said, I will be a soldier who can do anything to protect Etistin and our people. Her grandfather saluted her back and replied, Yes, I know. As he watched Tessia leave, he thought, that's what truly worries me. One late afternoon in the magnificent palace, Tessia's grandfather walked alone to a certain place. When he opened the door and entered, A girl named Anna was quite surprised to see him. She bowed and said, "I apologize, I didn't expect anyone to visit." He calmly replied, "It's okay, Anna, I just felt like coming." He asked worriedly, "How is she doing?" Anna replied, "I just finished preparing the necessary medication to keep her body healthy. Physically, her body is always in good condition, but no matter how hard we try, we still can't wake her up." He asked sadly, "Still the same as always?" Anna stood behind, bowed respectfully, and said, "I'm leaving now. I won't bother you anymore. Please feel at ease." Her eyes were filled with sadness, her face weary and disheartened. He sat down nearby and asked himself aloud, "Is my old lady sleeping well?" He confided in Mrs. Goodsky, "I don't know if you're aware, but the military has managed to secure watercraft and may use them to transport tens of thousands of soldiers to our continent." Then he answered his own question, "No, you probably wouldn't know. Anyway, when this area was developed, you were here with us. Almost forgot the main purpose. I have some news for you, news you won't believe. I've just allowed my granddaughter to join the battle. If she wakes up, you'll probably be surprised by my decision." He chuckled, then continued, "I'll treat her like a soldier, not just my reckless granddaughter." But his eyes turned sad, his face filled with worry. "But I fear I know just how strong her desire to go to the battlefield is, and I know how stubborn she can be. So I've decided that if she insists on fighting, at least she must do so under my supervision." He sighed sadly, covering his face, then continued, "But ironically, that's why I abdicated, to avoid all this and everything I'm doing, which is even more burdensome. And Ashura's always closely monitors me, ensuring I'm psychologically, spiritually, and physically fit to command the war and have enough authority to order all generals and guild leaders. But I just want to be lazy, sitting in the garden and watching my granddaughter grow day by day. Will my wish be so disastrous? How ironic that I have to send my own granddaughter to the battlefield." Everyone tried their best to help, but in the end, they all turned to obey my orders. So Mr. Lasty saw that I was the only suitable person to lead the battle. I've been following my wife for a long time. I don't want to see all my children and grandchildren leave me. I can't stand that." He slowly took her hand and said to her, "I still haven't had a chance to apologize to you. I feel something is wrong. You know, don't you?" Even though Mr. Lasty had removed the curse from her, she knew she could die if she revealed information about Araxia. "I thought about it too, but I didn't stop her." His whole body trembled. He bowed his head down heavily and said, "To gain advantage in this war, I pushed her into this situation. I will never forgive myself. I shouldn't have let things escalate to this point. It's not just because we've been through decades together. Even though some have shunned her as a spy, I would never do that. She fought against her own people to help us. She's stronger than anyone here." As he spoke these words, tears fell from his eyes without him realizing. Since when? He wiped away the tears with his own hand. He continued, "The real battle is about to begin. I won't be able to visit her for a while. My friend." He stood up solemnly and promised, "But I promise you, once this battle is over, I will find a way to help you. Rest until then, Tessia." And with that, Tessia and her comrades set off for battle. Darvis rotated positions and cautioned Tana, "Be careful out there. If anything happens, tell Grandpa. She won't let us rest." Tessia reassured, "Don't worry. I owe you guys for saving my life more than you've helped me." Caria advised them not to argue with her anymore. Darvis turned back to ask Tana behind him, "Have you seen that? These Godzilla-like creatures just keep coming, don't they?" Tana replied, "Yes, they're relentless." Caria asked the commander if it was okay. "Should we withdraw? We've been fighting these monsters endlessly." Tessia agreed with the suggestion and added, "Our attack on their dungeon was more of a reconnaissance. Let's pull back now." Darvis commented on how the mages behind them were enjoying themselves. "We've taken all the heat off them." Tana remarked, "Well, every profession has its benefits." Tessia moved closer to Tana and said, "I'll hold them off. You unleash all your firepower." Tana confidently replied, "Got it." Loud and clear. Darvis and Caria both dodged a bit when she shouted loudly. With the two of them avoiding it, Tana aimed at the monster and unleashed her firepower. Together, the four of them managed to defeat the beast. Darvis asked Tana, "Is that some new magic you've got? Pretty strong, but the backlash seemed overwhelming." Caria, nearby, chimed in, "You yelled a lot. I've told you to train more." "Tana is still training with her," I sighed. "I can only endure so much." Tessia said, "Enough now. This isn't the time for banter. The fire spell I just cast should hold them off for a while." Darvis chuckled and said, "All right then, let's rest." Tana grumbled, "Thinking about having oysters every day makes me want to die." Darvis teased Stannard, "Commander dear, or shall I call you princess? Can't you prepare a proper meal for hardworking warriors like us?" Stannard helplessly replied, "Enough already." Caria interjected between them and nudged Stannard. Darvis teased, "If you want to beg and flatter, look at her face before speaking." Then proudly added, "Don't envy my handsome looks." Caria snapped back, "What did you say? People find my short stature cute. You're just disliked, aren't you, Tessia?" Darvis retorted, "Enough, enough. Tana is the cute one here. She's just a little taller than a 10-year-old kid, and that kid is not only short but also bad-tempered." Darvis attempted to sling an arm around Tana, but she shoved him away. "Why drag me into this?" Tessia said, "All right everyone, we just fought near-death battles, covered in blood and grime, and you're here worrying about looks. Let's go rest, everyone. Just thinking about bathing and relaxing already cheers me up." They walked back towards the exit of the dungeon, where several people in tents were set up outside. Tessia turned back and thanked her comrades before urging, "Let's go rest now." Darvis busied himself starting a fire to burn the wood in front of him, and after a while, he succeeded. Tessia looked at their radiant faces, thinking about the 3 months they had spent together, creating such close and fond memories. Tessia heard someone calling her name. Turning around, she saw Helensen waving at her. Smiling, she ran over and hugged Helensen, exclaiming how happy she was to see everyone. Tessia introduced Helensen to the team. "This is Helensen," and began introducing everyone else, but before she could finish, Darvis took a woman's hand and greeted, "Hello, beautiful lady. It's a pleasure to meet you. I'm Darvis, the most handsome man of the Liario tribe." Caria, behind him, covered her face, adding, "And also the laziest member of the family." Tessia thought to herself, "That arrogance must have its reasons. He is one of the masters in mana control." Helensen asked, "Are you a raider then?" Caria, surprised, replied, "Yes, ma'am. How did you know?" "The raider clan has served under the Liario clan for centuries," Helensen explained smoothly, observing Caria's adept mana control. Hearing this, Caria blushed slightly and felt both pleased and embarrassed. The Raider clan is renowned for their formidable combat skills, while the Liario clan specializes in exquisite axe techniques. Helensen continued, noting Caria's lineage. Born into a family without any sons, Darvis, with his temperament, has achieved many victories on the battlefield, she added. By his side is Caria, treated like a son due to the lack of male heirs in her family. They have become a formidable duo on the battlefield. With his fiery temperament, Darvis focuses on 2 things in life: wooing beautiful women and caring for little Caria, Helensen remarked. Raised as a boy in her family, Caria has a tough demeanor, but is also caring and attentive to others. She is the heart that binds everyone together on the battlefield. Seeing Caria clinging to Darvis and playfully hitting him, Helensen teased, "Darvis, why are you always so violent with me?" The whole team burst into laughter at their interaction. Tessia, embarrassed, turned red-faced. Durden looked at Tana and remarked, "Wow, they're just like Altho and Tessia, aren't they?" The entire squad burst into laughter again. Tessia blushed even more deeply. Durden then noticed Tana's weapon and commented, "Hey, this staff looks unusual. Haven't seen it before." Tana chuckled and explained, "Oh, I customized it a bit to suit my unique skills and strength. I created it myself." Tessia joined in, saying, "Tana can channel spells through those shots." Everyone marveled, commenting on its impressive capabilities. During Tana's assessment, he created many surprises. As a result, He was introduced to his grandfather by Professor Gideon. Tana is a gold core mage, possessing two magical attributes, fire and defense. However, due to his unique body, he cannot accumulate as much mana to cast spells as other mages. Despite this, Tana always strives to learn and has proven his excellent qualities through his innovations and proficient control of magic. His team is one of the youngest here, but they have fought very bravely to protect their homeland. They always perform well in every assigned task, holding their ground, driving away monsters, and helping people feel secure in battle. At this moment, Tessia asked, "Why has everyone come here?" Helen-san suddenly, with a serious expression, replied, we just returned from the defensive wall area. The situation there is very tense, but we received orders from above to send our team here to assess the situation and see if we can help in any way. I'm quite surprised. It seems like something is about to happen here, so you and your team should prepare well." Tana worriedly asked, "What did you see at the wall?" The whole team looked gloomy. Tessia then asked, "Have you all fought with the Alexia mages?" Helen-san replied, "Yes, we were at the wall for about 4 months. It was like a military base, but we fought at the border. The mages were not the biggest problem, it was the beasts." Continuing from Helen-san, Angela said, "That's why the higher-ups sent us here. The mutated mana beasts in this cave are all controlled by the Alagia. There are hundreds, even thousands of them. We have to find and kill them before the Alagia use them to destroy the wall. The mutated mana beasts tamed and controlled by the Alagia are usually the leaders of their own dungeons. Through them, we can use energy to control hundreds of mana beasts under their command. As long as those mutated ones are alive, the lower-level mana beasts will obey them and fight for the Alexia. Countless teams have entered the dungeons to find and kill the mutated ones before the Alexia can gather enough mana beasts and destroy the wall. My team and I were assigned a dungeon with an S-level mutated beast. The battles here are even fiercer than war." Tessia said seriously, "Tell me more about the battle at the wall, Helena-san." Adam, angry, said, "Listen, princess, this is not a bedtime story read to you by a nanny. This is war, with deaths on both sides, and that's considered fortunate." Tessia replied, "I understand what war is like, Adam. I ask because while we are fighting monsters here, my team will be sent to the battlefield. I want them to be well prepared." Angela, laughing and hugging Adam's arm, said, "All right, it's time to set up camp. Take it easy, everyone. Dinner will be ready when you get back." Durden told Tessia, "Don't mind Adam's words. The battlefield is harsh. He reacts that way because he doesn't want you to know." Helen-san added, "The Alexia soldiers are much more brutal than the mana beasts here. At least the beasts fight out of instinct for survival, while the soldiers fight to massacre others. Honestly, I feel a bit sorry for them." Tana asked, "What do you mean by that?" Jasmine said, "Information is the most important thing in war. Both sides want to gather all the information they can about the other side, which means there will be imprisonment and torture. The battle here is black and white. Monsters are bad, and we are good. But when we fight a human who can talk, scream in pain, and beg for mercy, everything turns gray. Distinguishing right from wrong becomes much harder." While they were talking and contemplating in worry, a voice cried out, "Please, let me in. Quickly, get a doctor here." Hearing this, everyone immediately went into a defensive state and looked toward the source of the call. Helen-san then asked Tessia, "Does this happen often?" Tessia replied, "No, it doesn't." In the healing room, Tessia led a few people inside, and everyone there was surprised and asked, "Princess, what happened? Are you hurt?" A red-haired man called out to Helen-san. She cheerfully shook his hand and said, "It's great to see you here, Drogo. Or should I call you Captain now?" He responded, "Oh, come on, you could easily take my place. But why are you two here? Are you all right?" His face showed quite a bit of worry at this point. Elder Albreda asked, "Princess, you must be curious about the information our prince brought, right?" She smiled awkwardly and said, "You can't hide anything from you, can you?" Elder Albreda laughed. "This shabby infirmary hardly looks like a place for chit-chat. Come over here and help me with these herbs." Tana stammered, "Me? Okay." Hellenson said, "We didn't mean to intrude, but I have to report to the superiors at the wall. I think the quickest way to get information is to talk to him." Drogo agreed, "You're right, but unfortunately, it might be a while before he can respond." Tana, holding a bunch of items, asked, "What happened to him?" Elder Albreda, checking his leg, replied, "Dehydration and severe exhaustion. It seems he hasn't eaten or drunk anything for days. Judging by his legs, he must have been running for quite a long time." Drogo wondered, but running from what? Suddenly, he sprang up and asked, "What? How long was I unconscious?" Drogo reassured him, "Calm down, Sayer. Just about 10 minutes or so." Elder Albreda handed him a glass of water and said, "Drink this first, then talk." Sayer gulped down the water in one go. Drogo, still worried, asked, "I know you just woke up, but we need to know the situation immediately. Where's your team?" Sayer clenched his fists and looked down. "They're all dead. I'm the only survivor. I argued with my team, so I didn't go with them initially, but I felt guilty and followed after they left. When I got there, I was terrified to see them ambushed by the beasts. They were far more dangerous than those on the surface, numbering in the hundreds. Some even had human weapons. I hid in a corner, shaking, feeling lucky to be alive. But I had to hide for days to finish setting up the teleportation gate. I couldn't activate it there, fearing the beasts would destroy it before I could use it, so I ran back here." Sugar, looking worried, asked, "You said you finished setting up the teleportation gate. Meaning?" Sayer, pale and anxious, slowly recounted, "Behind them, there's a large door. It seems they're guarding something behind it. I think we found it, the lair of the S-level mutated beast." After hearing Sayer recount everything he had witnessed and experienced just a few minutes later, Drogo's voice echoed throughout the large cavern, informing everyone about the scout team's message. Over 100 soldiers in the cave were bustling about, preparing for the imminent battle. "We had done very well during the 3 months we were here, but this is a real issue. Facing a true mutant, I could see that Caria and Darvis were also a bit anxious, needing to shake it off. But as for Tessia, the youngest among us, she remained calm and confident." Suddenly, Tana's face turned red when he looked at Tessia. He told himself, focused, "Tana, you can't be with her anyway, besides, she loves Altho." He picked up his crossbow and said, "The monsters we have encountered and fought before will be nothing compared to what we will find once we go through that gate. I have 25 low-damage rounds and 8 high-damage enchanted rounds. It might be better to add 5 more low-damage rounds and 2 more high-damage rounds. Or maybe..." "You're saying everything you're thinking," Caria said, startling Tana. She laughed and said, "Come on, Tana, you need to stretch before going into battle." She held out her hand. Tana took Caria's hand, smiled, and said, "All right." "Listen up, troops," Drogo called out. "Be cautious when you go through. We have no way of knowing how many beasts are on the other side." Tessia said, "Hey everyone, we will all survive this and have a grand feast to celebrate. Agreed?" Darvis, Caria, and Tana agreed in unison, "Agreed." Drogo shouted, "All right everyone, move out." Hearing this, everyone charged forward. As the battle raged with the monsters, Tana was terrified when he saw someone being attacked by 2 beasts. "No, that's Darvis," he thought. Caria and Tana tried to save her, but when he felt for a pulse, he was devastated. "Damn it, she's dead," he muttered. Someone shouted a warning to Tana. "Watch your left." Tana glanced left, then attacked the monster and said, "Die, Caria." She followed with a powerful shout. Darvis replied, "It's time for you to become useful, huh?" Tana coldly retorted, "Shut up." Caria had called her teammates here to assist. Darvis instructed, "Surround them." "Understood," said the magic master, finishing their job and dismissing them. Drogo told everyone to clear the path for Tana. Using her bow, she attacked the monsters. Her fireball defeated them. Drogo nodded and said loudly to the healers, "Go tend to the injured. If we can't fight anymore, retreat to camp." Darvis and Caria congratulated Tana. Darvis said, "Well done, young mage." Oddly, Drogo stood on a high rock, raised his sword, and told the warriors, "This is a decisive victory. Even though Mana's army unexpectedly attacked us monsters, we will continue forward. Our comrades' sacrifices will not be in vain." Tana pondered quietly. A decisive victory. Drogo said so. But can it really be called a victory? Look at this, he continued. The weight of a life is not just a simple number. 10 lives have been lost, and we haven't even reached their den yet. How many more will die today? After the battle, as everyone rested and tended wounds, Tana noticed Tessia looking at her. She asked, "What's wrong, Tessia?" Tessia sincerely expressed relief that they won, but mourned the loss of 10 warriors. Darvis abruptly cut in, always skeptical of their success, distributing goodwill and charm to rough people like us. "See." Tessia told Darvis to stop right away. Karya, sitting on the ground, looked up and firmly held Tessia's hand, saying, "We did our best, and we won." Tana stood up and agreed, "She's right, Tessia. We all know what can happen every time we go into battle. We can't save all the warriors." Tessia laughed and agreed, "You're probably right. I can't save them all." Darvis interjected, "That's right." Tana paused. "Wait, that's not what I meant. Has anyone asked if anyone needs healing?" Tessia sadly remarked, "At this rate, I won't be able to keep up with him." Karya questioned him, "But you just said the name you always mention, right, Alpho?" Darvis sighed and said, "Oh, it's him again. You describe him as all-around talented, charismatic to the point of not being human, with no flaws whatsoever. Isn't that biased?" Karya laughed and teased, "Oh please, you're just jealous because Altho embodies the ideal you dream of achieving. Plus, he's definitely more handsome." Darvis angrily retorted, "Say that again, I dare you." Tessia, standing behind them, interjected, "I mean, he's quite famous at school. Though I'm not sure if he recognizes that. At first, meeting him was a bit intimidating." Darvis and Karya persisted, asking Tessia if he saved her from human traffickers after she left home. "Yes," she acknowledged truthfully, "but I didn't really feel it was pure kindness. It was more like a calculated move." Karya's eyes sparkled mischievously as she quipped, "Bad boy." Darvis muttered beside her, "I might just vomit." "I don't see him as that great," he continued. "After you were kidnapped during the Academy invasion, he didn't even check to see if you were okay. Just went to a place no one knew about." Tessia quickly explained to Alpho that she had gone with my uncle to make sure I was okay, but he was busy. "Oh, right, somewhere to secretly train," Tana interjected, addressing Darvis. Karya also scolded Darvis for being too harsh. Darvis responded, "If you ask me, all I saw was him running from battle because he was afraid of dying." Tessia piped up from behind, "You're wrong, Darvis. Although may be naive and inexperienced in some areas, but he's not a coward who runs away. His desire to protect those he loves is too strong for that." Darvis firmly asserted, Well, Altho will be the hero who saves us all from Elegia's wrath or whatever." He left, the three of them looked after him. Karya teased the poor guy. Tana asked, "He can't be that strong, right?" Tessia shook her head and assured her, "He's very strong." Karya eagerly added, "I hope to meet him soon. Will you introduce us?" Tessia laughed and replied, "Of course, I look forward to meeting him again soon." The army finished resting and resumed their journey. Darvis felt a chill and asked, "What's the situation, Drogo?" He replied, "We should reach the place where Sayer, our explorer, and his team were ambushed by mana beasts. Based on his report, we should expect at least a few hundred, if not more dangerous ones than usual." He reminded everyone to prepare mentally and hoped for their safety. Drogo glanced left and right, muttering, "What kind of mess is this?" They saw the beasts all defeated. Darvis commented, "I don't know if I should feel relieved or scared." Drogo ground his teeth and instructed Tessia to keep the formation intact. As they approached the door, someone opened it and remarked that it didn't close properly. Drogo ordered it to be opened wider, with the others remaining battle-ready. When the door opened, they were surprised to find all the beasts already slain. Looking closer, on top of the beast corpses, Tessia spotted Altho standing proudly, his sword resting on them, waiting for everyone. "Altho?" Darvis questioned, Bewildered looks exchanged between everyone, not understanding what was happening. Suddenly, Southey jumped into Tessia's arms. Drogo worriedly asked if the princess was all right. Stopping him, she shouted, "He's a friend." "What's his name?" Drogo yelled loudly. Altho jumped down and slowly approached them, saying, "I'm not your enemy." Helenson joyfully exclaimed, "Altho, you're back." Tana stood behind, thinking. So, that's Altho Tessia talked about. But why isn't Tessia happy to see him? Drogo apologized for interrupting their reunion, but stated many issues needed resolving. What exactly happened here? He was angry. Altho calmly replied, "I'm sure no one was informed, because I just arrived here and hadn't heard a thing. I didn't expect to appear right in the middle of such a massive herd of monsters." Drogo asked, "Are you saying you handled all those beasts by yourself, including that Class S monster? But you're just a kid, and we're a whole battalion of mages who have been preparing for weeks." Everyone asked who this kid was. Tana added sarcastically, "How could that be possible?" Altho's composure remained, stating, "My spirit beast really enjoys eating monster cores." Drogo was surprised. That tiny creature ate all those monster cores. Suddenly, a monster appeared behind Altho. Tessia was alarmed, but Altho remained calm and swiftly struck it down. "Sorry, I must have missed one," he admitted. "Anyway, if you have any questions, please wait until I've rested and had something to eat, okay?" Tessia turned to Drogo. "I'll take care of him, Commander. I'll make sure he safely escorts back to base." Helenson added, "He's also our former teammate." Altho approached Tessia and thanked her, which made her smile brightly. There was no more doubt, this was definitely her childhood friend. Yet, something uneasy lingered in her chest. It had been years since they last met, and she had expected their reunion to be different. She could share with everyone the rest of her unexpected encounter. Sylvie fell peacefully asleep in Tessia's arms, delighted by Altho's presence. They returned to camp together, sitting in a room where Altho kept secrets, only summarizing the essentials, much to Drogo's dissatisfaction, but enough to plan their next move. Jasmine left, advising everyone to rest well. Altho and Tessia waved goodbye to her. When only the two of them remained, Tessia looked at Altho and reached out to hold his hand, saying with teary eyes, "It's been so long, hasn't it? I've missed you so much." Altho gently wiped the tears from her small, pretty face with his hands and replied, "I've missed you too, silly. You're still such a tender-hearted kid." Tessia blushed and awkwardly said, "Shut up, I've changed a lot, you know." Altho chuckled and said, "I know, but you're still the same to me." He leaned his chin on his hand affectionately and asked, "Tell me about yourself. I want to know everything." Outside, Tana sat by the fire, deep in thought, while Darvis approached, covering his face, saying despondently, "It's just so uninspiring." Karya, lost in thought, commented, "I told you it would be different and more lively, even if we all united. I'm not sure we can return unscathed from such a battle." Darvis pointed at Karya and said, "Exactly, that's impossible. He's just one person. How could he handle all of them?" Karya laughed and said, "Haha, why do I smell jealousy here?" Tana asked if she meant envy, and Karya explained, "Jealousy is when you worry someone will take away what you have, while envy is when you chase after what others have." Darvis stood up and said, "I understand now. I challenge him to a duel." They warned him not to do it. Karya asked, "Why are you upset about this? He's just a human." Darvis didn't need to know how strong he was. He couldn't end this war. Darvis replied, "I don't need your pity. I want to know how powerful a person who wipes out all the monsters and even that Class S beast can be and how he talks to everyone. He seems like a sly one." Tana pointed out that he had just arrived and didn't know anyone. Darvis angrily asked why he was standing up for him. "There's no side here. Simply put, I'm just speaking my mind. On the battlefield, it's normal to be cautious of strangers, but you've also heard Tessia talk about him constantly. Don't you think we should trust him?" Darvis replied, "Her mind has been clouded by childhood memories. You've also seen the tension between the two of them. Maybe you already have something with her, right?" Tana got angry, pointing at Darvis's chest and saying, Are you so small that you act like a child? Darvis, equally irritated, grabbed Tana's collar and retorted, I'm just following my instincts, you nuisance. Carria intervened and said, enough, don't argue like this. Despite Carria's words, they continued arguing. Darvis suggested that maybe Tana couldn't handle the transformation of his mana core, hence his resentment towards Darvis. Tana replied, at least I don't go overboard when I clearly see someone stronger than me, to keep my priceless dignity intact. Darvis was furious, but eventually let go without grabbing Tana's collar anymore, muttering, damn it, forget it. Carria sighed in relief and said, luckily he realized his mistake. Tessia and Althav stepped out and announced, we're done with the meeting. Darvis interjected, but this is still different. He approached Althav and introduced himself. I'm Darvis, the fourth son of the Leo family. I formally challenge you to a duel. The people around cheered them on. Darvis affirmed, yes, let us see the strength of your axe. Althav asked, although I've accepted your challenge, can you tell me why you want to fight me? Darvis replied, it's a matter of a man's pride. Drogo intervened. All right, that's enough. Let me briefly explain the rules before we begin. You can only enhance your body with mana. Whoever surrenders or loses the ability to fight will lose. Although understood the rules and thought, Darvis is a skilled warrior, so I must fight seriously to see if he lives up to his words. Drogo shouted, begin. Darvis swiftly charged at Altho, but Altho easily evaded. Those outside wondered what was happening, telling Darvis to stop pretending. Darvis yelled, quiet down. Tana thought, I've known Darvis long enough to understand the ferocity of an A-class monster. Though cruel, his fighting is effective. I've seen him defeat an A-class adventurer twice his size and smirk arrogantly. Now, I can't trust my eyes anymore. Standing here, I can still see the bloodthirsty monster Darvis is afraid of. Darvis yelled loudly and continued charging towards Altho, exerting all his effort to defeat him. However, to his dismay, Altho managed to dodge all of his attacks and landed a punch squarely in Darvis's abdomen. After that punch, Darvis realized the incredible reflexes of this monster. It was truly insane. Block this. Although easily broke Darvis's attempt to counterattack, Darvis kept rushing forward to attack, but he always ended up being the one receiving blows. At this point, Darvis's whole body was in pain and he collapsed to the ground. People outside observed and wondered what had just happened. Carria recognized it as a mana pressure point. Tana asked, is that the skill of blocking mana flow in the body? I read about this in Mana Anatomy. But aren't those points supposed to be protected due to mana-enhanced body? Carria explained, those points are indeed very small, almost impossible to target in combat. Altho approached Darvis and asked if he needed help, but Darvis told him to stay away. Tana chuckled and said, I think we just witnessed something amazing. Darvis lay on the ground, wondering what was happening and why he couldn't move. At this moment, Tessia's grandfather approached and reassured Darvis, you'll be fine, kid. Right, he added, looking around. Altho and everyone turned to look. Tessia's grandfather then held Altho by the shoulders and asked accusingly, why didn't you tell me you were back, son? Altho replied, I'm glad to see you too, Grandpa. Oh, Lord Lasty, said Altho, Sylvie and I have changed a lot. Altho added, I hope so too. Tessia's grandfather then asked, how did you and Jens know you were here? He said, Lord Lasty received a letter from Lord Winsome, so I came here right away. Lasty replied, tell me more. When Altho came to where Tessia was stationed, Lasty said, wasn't that Jens's idea? Your sense of humor, he added, is unforgettable. Tessia replied, meeting Altho was more surprising than meeting an S-class monster while hunting. Altho added, the day I arrived, a pack of monsters attacked me and Sylvie, and we couldn't even take a breath. Tessia eagerly asked, so, what you told Drogo just now is true. You took down all of them alone. What about the door? How did you get in, and how did you? Tessia's grandfather interrupted with a wave of questions. Not now, Tessia. There are a few important matters we need to discuss with Altho, and not here either. Tessia asked, "So, are we leaving then?" Lasty replied, "Not you. You'll stay." Tessia then turned to Altho. "You've only been here a few hours and they're already taking you away." Altho replied, "I still have a lot to say to them." Tessia's grandfather intervened, "Tessia, this dungeon has been cleared out, so everyone will be leaving soon. You have your own battle to prepare for, right? Your team will be very busy, so get ready for them." Tessia reluctantly obeyed. "My battle. I must fight with my own strength." Lasty praised, "Very good, Commander." "My own battle. I must fight with my own strength," Tessia repeated. Lasty added, "Go on now, Tessia. Child, you've grown stronger in just a few months. The battles you've been through have forged you well." "Thank you, Master," Altho interjected. Tessia was surprised. Master Lasty accepted Tessia as his disciple. Lasty replied, "Surprising indeed." Tessia and Altho stepped outside. When Altho was spotted by Tana, she cheerfully waved at him. Darvis asked, "What's this? Why are you greeting him?" Tana replied, "I think it's appropriate, as Master Lasty said." Tessia and Altho noticed that Tessia's grandfather and Altho had already gone somewhere. Altho asked Sylvie, "Why didn't you talk to Tessia earlier?" She replied, "A lady must have one or two secrets, you know." "So you're a lady now, huh?" Altho teased. She responded, "Next time, surprise Tessia." Altho looked up and saw Boo, a big bear. Ellie appeared behind it. "Ellie, what's going on?" he exclaimed. She rushed to hug Altho and said, "Congratulations on coming back, big brother." He hugged her back and thanked her. "Ellie, you're so grown up now. Don't jump on me like that." Ellie smiled. "Ah, they're here." She waved and called for their parents. At this moment, Altho's face was tinged with sadness, but surprisingly, both of them approached and embraced Altho tightly. He stammered, "Mom, I don't understand." "I thought." His mother's warm voice interrupted. "Our child, nurtured for over a decade, has returned. After years of training and hardship, I think a hug is well deserved." Reinhold ruffled his son's head and affirmed, "I'm sure you faced all kinds of difficulties." His mother added, "And I've invested so much in you." He scratched his head and admitted, "Mom's right. You both have given me more than I could have ever expected." His younger sister grabbed Altho's hand and called out, "Hey, big brother. Why didn't you ask me about Boo?" Altho replied, "This big dog here is named Boo." Boo growled and teased, "So you're making jokes with my name now." It warned Altho. He turned to his younger sister and said, "Boo seems a bit hot-tempered." She immediately hugged Boo again and said, "He just wants to see if you're as strong as I've told him. Boo is very competitive." Altho asked in surprise, "Wait, can you talk to monsters? Can you bond with them?" His younger sister chuckled and said, "I guess so." Reinhold boasted proudly of his children, while their mother said, "At least we know who raised this daughter." Altho then asked, "When did this happen?" His grandfather quickly responded, "Lord Winsome didn't mention this. He gave the mana beast to our family as a gift before you moved to Epheotis." Altho wondered aloud, "That's it? Winsome gave this stuffed animal to my sister? How can she ride it into battle?" Reinhold confirmed, "Yes, when Lord Winsome handed it over to our family, it was just a little one. Even so, I must say, Boo has grown so much in just over 2 years." His younger sister added, "He's grown pretty fast, right?" Grandpa Lasty said it was truly touching to witness such a warm family reunion like this. "The rest of the story will have to wait until after we've finished discussing it," added. Altho turned towards his parents and began. "But Grandpa Lasty," Lasty promptly interjected, "up until now, your family has always lived here. This place will indeed bring the best benefits for you. You will meet them again soon." Altho respectfully bowed and replied, "Yes, thank you." He gently rubbed his younger sister's head and said, "I'll talk to you later, okay?" His sister happily responded, "Okay." With that, Lasty and Vion walked alongside Altho. When he glanced back, he saw his family enjoying themselves. Boo was patting his sister's head and saying, "I'll train harder to protect you." She laughed cheerfully, Haha, I know, boo. Altho confided in Sylvie. I'm glad my sister doesn't have to be lonely anymore. Sylvie simply replied, yeah. Eventually, the three of them entered a spacious meeting room. Altho, curious, asked, is it just us? Where's the king or queen? Or the council? Lasty shook his head, and his grandfather wore a sad expression as he explained. There are still many things from the war that I haven't quite caught up on. Good Sky is currently in a deep sleep to counteract the effects of an activated curse, when she reveals information about Alexia. Hearing this, Altho grew angry, unable to believe everything he was hearing. He demanded, what about Alexia? But he managed to keep his composure and added, tell me everything. After that conversation, Altho took action. I spent hours bombarding the two elders with countless questions. I had been out of the loop for nearly 2 years. Winsome and Wren only told me what they thought was necessary, so there wasn't much. According to his grandfather, Tessia, the Slight Eaters were focusing most of their efforts on the kingdom of Jamia, hoping to regain the loyalty of the dwarves. Meanwhile, Casting Gliner had done things similar to what Tessia had done, establishing a team to gain frontline combat experience. Altho's family had relocated to the castle for protection, but the Helsty clan had gone somewhere else. Sishin was using his resources to support the war effort. Altho inquired, what about my parents? Are they also eager to join the battle? His grandfather replied, your father is, but I've advised him to restrain himself until you return or Elsano grows a bit older. Altho thanked his grandfather and said, I can't imagine how I would feel if my father went to battle and died there, especially if I'm not here anymore. Grandfather Lasty responded, Tessia is very ambitious and has been trained extensively. Altho interrupted, but you still worry about her safety more than anything else, don't you? I understand, Grandfather Tessia. If I say anything wrong, please correct me. But it seems like everyone is concerned about the current battle on the front line. He continued, although the defensive line at the wall is preventing the mutants and Alexia soldiers from advancing, the secret teleportation gates created by the Alexia and their ability to control mana beasts, especially those of S or SS rank, pose a significant threat. The sparse forest areas seem to be the perfect places for them to establish and control these dangerous forces. Altho analyzed the situation further, however, it's too obvious. None of them can break through our defense lines, meaning either we are stronger or they are delaying time. Looking at the worried expression on Vian's face, Altho speculated, I think it's the latter. Grandfather Tessia's face turned serious as he solemnly said, recent evidence has confirmed these suspicions. It's very suspicious. Lasty interjected, right now, Altho, you can't blame yourself for what we're about to say. He placed a paper on the table, showing detailed sketches. Altho was shocked and exclaimed, this isn't from this land. Lasty confirmed, if you're wondering, this is a ship constructed by Alexia, using your designs. Altho angrily crumpled the paper in his hand. Grandfather stood up and said, now, Altho. Suddenly, someone opened the door and announced, Commander Lord, Sir Virion senses something ominous here. His worried expression prompted him to inquire further, what's the matter? They're within range now, Commander, the soldier stuttered. They're here on the western coast. They've arrived at Alexia's ship. Upon hearing this, Altho panicked and sprinted as fast as he could. While running, he encountered a guard along the corridor who tried to stop him. Ignoring the guard, Altho continued running until he reached the entrance where 2 sentries blocked his path. Stop right there, one of them commanded. Quickly declare your identity and purpose. Ignoring their words, Altho arrogantly replied and tried to rush inside, but the guards halted him. Wait. Hold it, the guard said firmly. Commander Virion or Lord Lasty must authorize entry. No one comes in or out without their permission. Altho retorted, I just returned with Virion and Lasty. They know I need to go out. Open the gate quickly. The guard remained steadfast, reminding him, even if you're nobility, you should learn to respect your elders. It's dangerous for you to go out alone. Unperturbed, Altho asserted his authority and convinced them to comply, stating he didn't need protection at that moment. Not now, he insisted. Just then, Lord Lasty arrived and, impressed by Althal's influence, assured the guards, placing a hand on Althal's shoulder and allowing him freedom to leave whenever he wished. However, he cautioned Althal not to act foolishly or waste time. Althal dashed inside and ordered the gate to Etistin to be opened, where Good Sky lay. Two men stood beside her bed, and Althal demanded, "Provide us with as much information as possible. Knowledge is the key to victory." Addressing Headmaster Good Sky, he urged cooperation, emphasizing the lives saved by their collaboration. Even risking death from a curse was acceptable if they could obtain the answers they sought. With that, he concluded his speech abruptly, seemingly waking up from a dream, possibly dispelled by Lord Lasty's intervention. Realizing the two men earlier were just a nightmare after her long slumber. In the vast, sprawling field of flowers, a man and a woman strolled together. As they walked, they conversed. "Now that the war has ended, what will you do next?" the man asked. "We've known each other for quite some time now. Through the victorious years, whether as foes or not, there's something I've always thought," he continued. The woman smiled, curious. "Oh, what is that?" "Undying affection for me, perhaps," he teased. "But remember, I do have a family," he added. She shrugged, nonchalant. "That hasn't stopped other nobles from faltering. You've always thought of me as a great guide and inspiration. I can imagine you as a headmistress of some renowned academy, leading young minds toward a bright future," he mused. Suddenly serious, he suggested, "I think you should consider it. It suits you." She raised her hand, letting a butterfly alight on her delicate, pretty fingers, beaming brightly as she quipped, "Or should I start my own academy? I'm starting to like this city," he chuckled. "An academy for wizards in this famed city would be intriguing," he added. She placed her hand on his shoulder and suggested, "Or perhaps we should start one together." He laughed heartily, "Haha. What would we name it then?" "The Goodskay and Yiling School of Magic, perhaps." "All right, but I'll enroll our child or grandchild when they're old enough," he promised. "If your school proves good enough for them," she replied assuredly. "Just wait and see," she teased. "Seoju Academy will become the premier school for wizards worldwide." He shook his head, jokingly remarking, "Yiling Academy doesn't sound too impressive." She quipped back, "Then let the Goodskay and Yiling School of Magic always shine bright." "You'd be lucky if your descendants get accepted," he teased. She knew he was only joking. "Well, here's hoping the academy will thrive splendidly," she smiled, hoping so. Their conversation ended there, the sky turning gray as the man walked away, leaving the girl behind calling after him. Blood drops began to appear, falling slowly to the ground. The man turned back, saying, "Now I'm just an old man, quick now." A loud noise awakened Varian, who had dozed off at the table due to fatigue. Realizing the earlier scene was just a dream, a memory of his and Good Sky's past, Varian stepped outside and asked the soldier, "What's happening?" "I'm not sure, sir," the soldier replied. "It sounds like a scream from below." Varian suddenly remembered that it was where Good Sky lay. He slapped himself and called for Anna. Althal had arrived at the city of Etistin. A man grabbed his hand and asked, "Kid, what are you doing here? Don't you know this place is under emergency alert?" Althal replied confidently, "Commander Varian sent me here." He shook off the man's hand and said, "Please open the gate and see. Altho is still young, I don't know his true abilities." The man nodded thoughtfully. "All right, Commander Varian sent a handsome, skinny boy here to fight. If you're a noble kid, it's not the time to leave the house out of anger." He instructed another person to take the boy home. "I don't have time to protect anyone else now." Seeing no other option, Althal used his powers to demonstrate his strength. He said, "If you won't open the gate, I'll go on my own." At that moment, Altho and Sylvie transformed into dragons and soared into the sky. Althal remembered the day he visited Mr. Gideon's house with Uncle Vincent to negotiate a deal. He walked on the thick snow-covered ground, recalling Varian's advice. "Don't blame yourself, even if something happens. Always move forward and don't fight for the past. Fight for a better future." Althal realized he had never considered himself a hero needing to save the world. His reason for fighting was simple: to protect those he cherished. Now, after everything that had happened, he had another reason: to right the wrongs. Virion, upon hearing the scream from below, rushed down immediately. When he arrived, he saw a sorrowful scene. Anna was bowed in sadness, alongside others present. As Virion opened the door, he was stunned by the sight before him and realized that Good Sky had passed away. He cried out in anguish, realizing that her death, once a nightmare, was now a harsh reality. The video ends here. Thank you all for watching.